This particular video is for parents who have children with attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I raised one of those children, I learned a lot along the way, and I found that other parents helped me much more than I could have figured out how to do on my own. So I'm really glad to be here. I have 10 tips for you for helping your child get organized, make his way through life, but mostly to help him or her learn how to behave in a manner that's appropriate both at home and at school. And really, it's about you. It's your behaviors that will change as you support your child to learn new behaviors that he or she really needs. Number one is always remember, to the extent you can, to pay attention to good behavior. That's very difficult for parents who are often caught up in a world where there are competing interests. If you're fixing dinner, for instance, you want your child to sit quietly on the sofa, and you pay attention only if they're making noise or disagreeing with their siblings or having a fight. The important part here is to remember that that child is sitting quietly on the sofa watching TV while you prepare dinner, that it's your job to go in and say, I really like the way that you're behaving so that I can prepare dinner, or I really like how you're getting along with your sister, or because you've done such a good job of being quiet for me, we're going to have an extra dessert tonight. So start out reminding yourself to catch your child doing those things you want him or her to do and reinforce that at every opportunity. Step two is to ignore, wherever you can, minor misbehaviors. We know that children pick on one another. We know that they lean their chair back on two legs when they're not supposed to. We know that sometimes their behaviors are annoying, but they're not dangerous, they're not really harmful. And when you're trying to teach a child specific behaviors you want to change, to the extent you're able to do that, learn how to ignore those things that are annoying but not really a problem. Step three is to provide lots of feedback on your child's behavior. If they're doing something that you particularly approve of, a good idea would be to walk up to them and say, look, I think that you're doing a really good job, but also, if they're doing something or beginning to do something that's going to lead to a later problem, you need to stop the behavior, explain to the child what is happening, and tell them what needs to change. If they don't know, they'll pursue their own course of action, and then you get angry at the end of it. So provide feedback on their behavior. Step four is to provide that feedback as often as you're able to do that. It's difficult for parents to remember. I remember what it was like when my son was young, to be able to take the time to tell him what he was doing was good, what he was doing was inappropriate. He was on the track to something positive, he was on the track to something negative. But I did learn that Tom didn't really understand when I said behave. He had no concept of what that word meant. So it was, Tom, you need to keep both feet on the floor. That he could understand. And if I gave him that feedback fairly often, Tom, remember, hands to yourself, feet on the floor. He soon learned over time how to do those things I wanted him to do. Step number five is to always precede any negative you're doing with remembering that your child is doing the best they can under the circumstances available. So provide positive reinforcement first, positive feedback first. So if you have a child who has been playing nicely in the yard with his best friend and suddenly they get into a fist fight, when you go outside, of course you're going to have to stop the fight. No one wants a child to be hurt. But reminding them that, look, you played so nicely for an hour. That was great. I really appreciated it. That will help them feel good about themselves instead of feeling that the only messages they're receiving from their parents are negative ones. Goodness knows they'll have a lot of negative messages through their life, and home shouldn't be the place where those things come to the forefront first. So remember, positives first. Number six, and probably the most helpful one for me, was to develop routines at home. Time to get up in the morning, time to brush your teeth, time to comb your hair. We had a white melamine board on our wall by the kitchen table every morning, and my son was so distractible that he would have to read the list, take an eraser, and erase out every issue or every task as it came up. So it would be Tom, brush teeth, and he would erase that when it was completed. We soon learned that if that became the morning routine, if looking at the board was the morning routine, he was able to get through those chores. That doesn't mean he could do it as fast as I wanted. as fast as the school bus driver wanted, because it didn't work that way, but at least he was able to do it. Later, when he'd gotten the routine down, we used his favorite song he could listen to. And my son liked Pink Floyd, so he could play Pink Floyd while he was brushing his teeth, and when that song was finished, that meant he was finished. And that way he was able to do things in a more timely manner. So always remember, to the extent you're able to do that, have a routine at home, a place for homework, a time for dinner, a time for television, because the predictability of your environment is what provides comfort and security to your child and also lets them know what comes next. The next step is a fairly simple one, but it's one that can get enormously complex if we're not careful. And it's post the house rules. Write them down. And make sure you only have 2 or 3, or maybe 4 rules. The rules have to be very simple, because for the distractible child, even reading 1 through 10 is just too much. But if there are 2 or 3 rules, and they're fairly simple, hands to self, wash hands before dinner, you pick those things that are really important to you and that your son or daughter needs to change. Write them down and post them in a really clear spot. And have your child help you develop those rules. That way they'll have much more meaning to them, and they'll be able to follow them or understand them. You'll get to the point where instead of saying, remember the rule, you'll be able to point to the rules and say, which rule did you violate? And children are very smart. They figure it out in a hurry. So post the house rules if you're able to do that. The next one is to plan ahead for problems. I cannot tell you the number of times I've driven into Target's parking lot and found a youngster 4 or 5 or 10 years old refusing to get in the car or refusing to get out of the car, screaming, having a tantrum, or in line, waiting for you to buy the thing they want because they can hold out longer than you can. If you have rules about environments that you're going into, and if you plan ahead for those environments, kids will be more successful. I'll give you an example. If you're going to the grocery store, and that's a hugely distractible environment for children with attention problems, if you're going to the grocery store, does your child know the rules about grocery store? What are your rules? Is it important to you that your child stay with the cart? If so, that can be a rule. Is it important that your child not ask for anything that the grocery store has that he or she wants, usually candy at the checkout counter? If so, let them know. Then, after you tell them what your expectations are, when we go to the grocery store, John, I expect that you'll stay with the cart, or I expect that you will not ask for anything in that store, no matter how badly you want it. And if you're able to follow these rules, tell them what positive reinforcement will happen. If you're able to follow the rules, we'll stop for ice cream on the way home. If you are not able to follow the rules, you're going to have to sit in the car while I finish shopping. So make it very clear before you go, and make sure, again, state the positives first. If you can follow the rules, this is your reward. If you can't follow the rules, this is what will happen. Do that for restaurants, for grocery stores, for any place like the shopping mall where the activity level is high and the distractions are numerous. And you'll find that your child, when the rules are clear and he or she understands them, will be much more able to do what you want them to do, and you'll feel more secure knowing that they're safe. One of the things I think we lose sight of when our children misbehave is we don't think about their behavior as showing us a need for instruction. So you need to always with your child, when they display a behavior that's unacceptable, whether that's at home or at school, always think first, what instructional need does my child have? Because children who throw tantrums do so because they want or need something. If you understand what they want or need, then you can begin to teach them a different way to ask. But there is an instructional need implicit in almost everybody's behavior almost all the time. So if your child acts out in public, yells at you, has a temper tantrum, what has your child not learned about expressing anger in an appropriate manner? So always think first, what's the instructional need? You become a social scientist. You're looking for the answer, and once you understand what is driving your child's behavior, it's much easier to teach the skill. And number 10, and the most important of all the preceding ones, is don't give up. We know that children develop behaviors over a period of time, appropriate as well as inappropriate behaviors, and that changing behaviors is a little bit like learning to brush your teeth. You have to do the same thing every day. You have to complete the task every day. You have to do it more than once a day. It's frustrating for parents when the same behavior appears again and again, but realize that you are teaching your child appropriate ways to handle both positive and negative behaviors, and that in the height of your frustration, maybe you need to take a walk or buy some earphones or get away from the situation. But don't give up. Your child's life and their future depend on you to teach them the skills they need to know. Thank you so much.